Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. Today I have Christine Munroe, who leads the Kobo Writing Life business team. She drives the global growth of Rakuten's. I should have asked you how to pronounce that. I don't know how to pronounce that.
It's Rakuten, but
Rakuten, I knew it. I already knew it.
Every Midwestern American says it that way. All the Draft to Digital guys say Rakuten, so it was totally fine for me to hear it that way.
Rakuten. All right, so we'll start again.
Cool.
Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. Today I have Christine Munroe, who leads the Kobo Writing Life business team. She drives the global growth of Rakuten's Kobo digital self-publishing platform. She joined KWL when the platform was just in its infancy, and it is now a multi-million-dollar cornerstone of Kobo's content catalog. Prior to joining Kobo, she was a foreign book scout and literary agent in New York, and she spent her career helping authors reach international readers. So welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast.
Okay, thanks so much for having me.
Well, I always ask this just to get a little idea of who you are and where you're from, but everyone's entrepreneurial road is a little bit different. What kind of led you to the job that you're in now?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. So throwing it way back, I've always just been an obsessive reader. And as a kid, I always told my immigrant parents for them that I wanted to be a reader for a living. And they were like, good luck with that. But I did it, and I shove it in their face every chance. So I was a diehard English major, went to grad school for English, on that reading path. But I started to get a bit sick of the academic side of it, wanted to be more practical, and got interested in the publishing business. So I moved to Manhattan and started in the publishing industry there. My first job was at a literary agency, reading the slush pile, as it's belovedly known, and saying no to everyone. And that was a really sobering experience for me, to think, who makes these decisions in terms of content getting out into the world? Who am I as this 22, 23-year-old intern to say no to somebody who's taken the time and effort to write an entire book? And just then, self-publishing was starting to rise up in the world of digital publishing. So from there, I did get into global rights. So I was an international book scout for several years, meaning you have clients based abroad and scout the North American market for them to say, these books are on submission to editors this week. This editor is going to buy this one. You should buy it for Germany for this price because XYZ. So that was truly professional reading at its finest, and a really awesome job for any young people looking to break into the publishing industry. But I got this opportunity to join Kobo's self-publishing platform as it was really launching in the US, and I grabbed it. So I've been with Kobo for over 5 years now, and just took over running the self-publishing platform in the fall. But I've always been on the self-pub team, so that's been my focus at Kobo, and I love it. It's awesome.
So are you at the Vancouver base, or I know my audiobooks go through Wilmington. Where are you actually physically based?
So physically, I am sitting in Toronto. So our headquarters are actually here. We have a big building in Toronto in Liberty Village. And we do have a couple offices all over the place. And Rakuten obviously has their own headquarters all over the world.
Okay, I said Vancouver. I'm not on the wrong part of the planet.
So, same country. You got the
same country. I got the country right. That's terrible. They say Americans are terrible at geography. I just, I've got 5 college degrees. All right, so let's move on from that. Sure. What I want to talk to you about is how accessible it is to be self-published now. So I know your 108th episode, and congratulations on getting past 100. That's always a milestone with the podcast. Was Vivica A. Fox, who is a celebrity. And I think many people think I could never do that. But what I wanted to talk about was 2 podcast episodes, one with Mr. W, who made math guides, and then Charlotte Leonetti, who is a high school senior in Chicago. So generally, can you talk maybe a little bit about someone who would be like Mr. W or as a pharmacist, has something to share in nonfiction, and how they can use the Kobo platform to kind of take what they know, package it into a book, and then get it to a worldwide audience?
Absolutely. So if you are in that situation, it's very straightforward. You would write whatever you'd like to write. We don't have length requirements. So you start up a Word doc and write it. I would highly recommend getting a professional editor. There are a million ways to find one of those online, but set aside definitely a little bit of money to do that, and then get a cover designer. We do work with an organization called Readsy that's based in Europe. They have kind of an online platform for matchmaking authors and service providers, and I really trust them. They vet their resources extremely closely, so that's not a place that's going to take advantage of a new author. But you could also look at comp titles in your genre. So let's say if you're a pharmacy author, look at another book that's similar to the one you want to write, figure out who the editor was or the cover designer, and see if they're willing to do a freelance project within your budget. So once you have those 2 things ready to go, you would go to kobo.com/writinglife. You set up an account, which is free. And you would upload your cover and your book. We accept Word doc, DocX, and EPUB is our main format that, it's fairly industry standard at this point that books come to us in. And you enter a little bit of data about the book, the title, subtitle, if you have one, series info, author name, and click publish. I should mention you can do that in any language of your choice. Kobo authors have now published in 110 languages, which is crazy.
Okay.
Yeah. You can choose which territories you want to publish. In North America, you could actually just unselect North America and self-publish everywhere else. That's kind of a cool opportunity. And after you hit publish, the book typically goes live to the Kobo store within a few hours. So at that moment, your book is available for sale at the price you want around the world. And just to give a little extra info about Kobo, how it works is we originally were part of Chapters Indigo, which is, if you're American, you can think of it as like Barnes & Noble or Borders. It's an online and physical bookstore chain, the major one in Canada. But then we broke off and became independent. But we started building that kind of relationship with other retailers around the world. So we have thousands of global partners where we power their ebook store. And so they don't have to build that up from scratch. So like Mondadori and Fnac are some big examples in Europe. And in the US, we actually partner with the American Booksellers Association. So indie bookstores can sell ebooks with the Kobo platform. So when you click publish, all of that to say, on Kobo, your book actually goes live to a whole bunch of online retailers where global shoppers are used to shopping. And that makes Kobo super unique in terms of global reach. A lot of our authors are selling in like 60, 70 countries, which was unheard of as of 10 years ago. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, well, tell me a little bit about that change. So you were actually in New York at the publishing house, being the guardian and the 1% of the 1%, however small it was. So tell me how this is kind of, maybe if you have a success story or two. It's crazy. I've sold, I think we're at 12,000 audiobooks in the last year and a half. And now the checks come in, and I don't know, I was just thinking about it and talking with my wife, and I was like, wow, the receipts I get from books now come into the bank account. So you actually wouldn't have to worry about the mortgage, the car, or anything. It just keeps coming in. Mm-hmm. So if you can tell me a little bit about maybe some success story or two that of an author that just kind of changed their lives by having this platform and this ability.
Yeah, there are a lot. That's what I love about this job the most, honestly. What I love are the authors who actually already were traditionally published or, were just writing in their free time but had a day job. And just kind of cruised along on getting a little bit of money from their writing. And then with self-publishing, we're able to make it a full-time living and in a lot of cases actually hire their spouses or friends out of their day jobs to be their business partner or run their social media. So we have hundreds of those or thousands of those examples of authors who are now making a full-time living from their writing. One of the giants in indie publishing is Marie Force. Her top-selling series was rejected by every single romance publisher, and now it's sold something like 4 million copies through self-publishing.
Let's talk about that category for just a second. So
yeah.
And at a different, how do I put it, audiobook seller where they just made it very inexpensive to get romance novels. Can you tell me a little bit about how we didn't talk about this, a little bit how the money works or percentage works or things like that with the book?
Okay, so for ebook, the royalty structure, commission structure is you get 70% for any sale for an ebook price $2.99 and higher.
Do you have a limit?
No limit. So we see actually a lot of nonfiction authors and academics focusing on us and other similar retailers without that cap because you get the 70% no matter how high you go. So we actually have a couple new academic authors every single year who will publish their course pack or their textbook and, pull in a couple hundred sales, and that's several $1,000s. Boom.
Right. It really is. The limits are really restrictive in terms of the amount of time, because one of those academic books, and I can tell you I've written for Elsevier, can take, 2 years.
Yeah.
And then you're told, you're going to get $10. And you're like, what? That's crazy. $10.
It's awful.
So tell me a little bit about maybe so these academics that are coming in, because many of the listeners that we have are working at the pharmacy schools and things like that. How would somebody set up a course pack to be part of their class or something like that? Or is it just kind of the same? Is it just more about picking the category?
Yeah, it is truly exactly the same. And then you would just share that link with your students and go from there. And then the other cool thing is you can actually potentially experiment with some online marketing and do some cheap targeted Facebook ads to try to reach people who aren't necessarily taking your specific class that might just want to learn. We have some profs writing about songwriting, for example, and that's obviously a really huge appeal to all kinds of people. So you could start trying to reach that kind of niche outside of whatever you're specifically teaching. And then with audio, I should mention, so for Kobo Writing Life, my area of the business specifically, we are working on building audio uploading direct within the platform. It today in May 2018 does not exist yet, but it is the next project on our roadmap. But you can come into the Kobo store through a bunch of different ways. Find a Way being one of them, Listen Up Audio, and a bunch of other audio distributors, and then there's also the classic publishers, Blackstone, Tantor, a bunch of other opportunities.
Okay. All right. So how would somebody, I guess I didn't really understand. So how would somebody upload an audiobook? Do they have to go through a traditional publisher or do they send it in? How does that work exactly?
So right now you'd have to go through some kind of distributor, but one really good one I would consider would be Find a Way. They're very much if you're familiar with aggregators like Draft to Digital. So they're helping audio producers distribute to all kinds of different platforms, and then your titles would go for sale on Kobo very soon thereafter.
Okay, awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about the specific categories that you see. So in terms of readership, because my wife reads exclusively ebooks. I listen to exclusively audiobooks. Tell me a little bit about the ebook platform and then the print book platform in terms of getting an ebook out there and then a print book, and then the advantage of maybe doing all three.
Yeah. So I should mention we do not, as Kobo, do print at all. We are completely. Yeah. So that's a differentiator. We have never done print. That we very much focus on ebooks and audiobooks, like the digital reading experience. So there are tons of other POD options as if you're considering that as an author, but we don't play in that field, if you would. But I would recommend looking at it. A lot of authors do still see sales there. And with POD, you're taking less of a risk of, manufacturing costs or warehouse returns, all of that stuff. But for the advantages, I would absolutely say, obviously, ebook is the most affordable way to get your book out there into the market. And then audio, you just have to consider production costs. And if you think you're going to get the return on your investment, I think you would have a lot more expertise in terms of when to make that decision and what the market looks like for each genre.
My print books actually make a fraction of the other ones. It's negligible. So it's kind of like I do it just because I don't know. I just do it just because it's true. I don't have a good reason. All the money comes from the audiobook, then maybe a fifth from the electronic, and then it's just kind of like gas money with the print book.
Yep.
So that's just kind of the reality of how we are now.
Yeah.
Well, I guess just a couple of maybe concluding questions. What advice would you have for an author that thinks I can't do it? Someone who says, "Oh my gosh, I couldn't write a book. I couldn't do it," and it's just. People that have got an English degree. I mean, we both have English degrees, but people with English degrees write books. I don't write books, or celebrities write books, or they have somebody else write books. What advice would you have to somebody that maybe has a little bit of negative self-talk in terms of publishing?
Yeah, that's a really great question, actually, because even the most successful authors have that. I deal with authors who are multimillionaires, and they still have that self-doubt the whole time. So I think what's kind of hidden from a reader's experience is the draft and editing process, and how rough those copies can really look, and how much you can really improve a book from when you get it onto paper to when you would get it into the hands of readers. So to never underestimate the power of a helpful editor, or just getting the draft on paper and seeing where it takes you. So I would say, everyone, if you feel you have a story to tell, then you have an obligation to yourself to tell it. And see where that journey takes you. It's so important to take time to be creative, to do the things that have meaning for us, and set those goals. So I just encourage you to do it. There has never been an easier time to be an author in the world. Seriously, thinking back through history, it has never been easier to reach a global audience with your story and your words. So take advantage of it. It's exciting and it's inspiring, and the community is there to help you. There's a million awesome podcasts out there. You could get every single piece of information you want. Probably from this podcast right here.
Thanks.
So it's just like, there are way more reasons to do it than not to do it. So maybe make a list of the pros and cons, and that decision could be made for you.
No, I agree with you. And I guess as a final question, maybe I'll kind of go a little bit with Joanna Penn's story. I followed her for quite a long time, and I think she was in New Zealand when she created, I want to say, 2,000 or 400 book. I can't remember the exact number, but she made a bunch of print books, and that was her kind of thing to sell. And then she's gone on this road of ebooks and become a tremendously successful multi-six-figure author. And she's very targeted with her 3 groups of books that she sells. But as a niche author who sells within, pharmacology space or chemistry space, how are you niched to the world, I guess, is the question that I have. So in the US, I know exactly what conferences to go to, who to go see, and who to talk to. But how do you spread a niche to the world? I guess it's just kind of overwhelming to me at the same time as it's a wonderful opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's something pretty easy to experiment with, where step one is get it out there into the world, and step two, start trying to do some targeted ads. There are, like, the Facebook platform as one example, ways to just target other countries and very quickly measure the results and see, like, is there something here going in Germany, and try and find those groups online and start there targeting and measuring the return on your marketing investment. And yeah, I'm not a subject matter expert necessarily in your field.
I'm not asking you to be. I guess I'm just talking more about marketing and we say our platform's so important.
Yeah.
But it's just, I have an American platform, and I guess what I'm asking is, how does one start developing an international platform?
Yeah, I would say your American platform is your international platform. You have the basics, you have a website, you have content, and you just have to start small by getting your books out there in, for example, Kobo, to get to the place where readers are looking for their books, and just start thinking globally. I think that mind shift is actually the most crucially important step, to not just think about who's finding your book on Amazon, to think there are billions of people around the world, and just by putting your book on retailers where those people are shopping, you are obviously increasing your chances of finding a fan or a person interested in that subject, who then will do the word of mouth work for you, which is obviously the most valuable thing you could have as an author.
Yeah, it sounds like, Google is a search engine, but it sounds like Kobo is a search engine of readers. And it sounds like it's a really great place to be.
Yeah.
Well, I know your time is really valuable, Christine, and I really appreciate you being on the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to take a time to chat on a subject I don't usually talk about, so that was cool.
Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.